Hey guys, so for this video we're going to be making a Viking knit chain bracelet. So the tools we're going to need are a ruler, a draw plate, some small pliers, some wire cutters, a small screwdriver, a 1/4 inch Allen key, and some Teflon tip pliers, which are optional. They're just useful so you don't scuff up the wire as you're trying to pull it through stuff. For materials, we're going to need some 22 gauge wire, and we got to make sure it's soft. We're going to need some jump rings, we're going to need a clasp, and we're going to need some tape. So for the wire lengths that we're going to need 6 pieces of wire total to make this bracelet. We're going to need one 18-inch piece. We're going to need 3 36-inch pieces, and we're going to need 2 8-inch pieces. Now, if you want to make the bracelet a little bit longer or shorter, you can use another 36-inch piece, or you can use half of a 36-inch piece, depending on your wrist size. So initially, you're going to start with the 18-inch piece, then you're going to use each of the 36-inch pieces, and you're going to finish with the 8-inch pieces. So you don't need to cut them all at once right at the start. You can cut them as you go along. The first step to making the bracelet is to make the flower. And the flower is the piece that we use to start the weave of the bracelet. So to make the flower, we take the 18-inch piece of wire and we make 6 loops around our ruler. As you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So after we've made 6 loops, we take the wire off the end of the ruler, and then we take the end pieces of the wire and we wrap them around and through the tops of the loops, as you can see I'm doing here. After we've done that, we can take our small screwdriver and just make sure all of our loops are roughly the same size. And then we take the ends of our wire and we twist them together to make sure they don't come apart again. And if you mess up any of your loops while you're twisting, just take your small screwdriver and fix them. Then the next step is to fold out the petals of the flower. And you kind of do this by going opposite sides, I've found to be the most useful. And you just fold them out into what is basically a flower shape. Once you've got your flower shape made, be sure to adjust your petals so they're roughly even, and then we can move on to the next step. Now what we do is we take our Allen key and we put it in the center of our flower, and then we start folding our petals down onto the different faces of the Allen key. And I found the most useful way to do this is to do the opposing petals. That way your flower won't try and rotate on you too much. So you just take each petal and fold it down to the face. That's why having an Allen key is great, because you have 6 petals and 6 faces. And then once you've got all of your petals folded down, you just take a piece of tape and wrap it around the top to keep them from coming back up and apart and getting messed up. Now we get to start the actual weave of our bracelet. What you got to do is now take one of your 36-inch pieces of wire and you put it around the back side of 2 of the petals wires, like I'm showing here. And then we bend our end down and then loop our other end of our wire around the end that we bent down. So you can see it here, how it's done. Now we just take the other end of our wire and we just keep going around the back side of 2 petals, looping it over and around each time, doing each section of our weave. And we're going to go all the way around the flower until we get back to our initial starting position, and then I'll explain what to do there. If you find any of your petals are kind of messed up, just take your little screwdriver and adjust them. They don't have to be perfect right now, especially on your first loop, because this portion of your weave will get covered up later on. So once we've made it all the way back around, what we're going to do is we're going to take our screwdriver and just kind of even out our loop to make sure it's all kind of on the same level because it can get a little off. And we're also going to take a little screwdriver and just kind of bend up the wire that's our petal wire to make sure we can get a wire behind it. So now what you do is you take the end of your wire and you put it through the loop you made and around the back side of the petal wire, and then you pull it through. So from here on out, your weave is kind of made, and now all you have to do is you just go from one side of a loop that you've made to the other side of the loop. And you just keep doing that around and around and around and around until you reach the end of your wire. And the other thing is, don't worry that your initial set of loops is bigger. When we pull it through the draw plate, it'll even everything out and it's not a big deal. So as you go along, you might find that sometimes you just can't get the wire through. It's okay to pull your coil off of the Allen key, bend your wire tip around into kind of a hook shape, if you can get it there, and then kind of worm it through. Then put the Allen key back in and pull the wire fully through and continue on. If you can't get it through, grab your pliers and just yank it through. Once you reach the end of your wire where you can't make any more loops easily, you should cut the end off. And you can see I didn't cut quite enough off here, so I'm going to snip a little more. And then you fold it in, but not all the way flush with your coil. So you just kind of like put it so it's on the inside of the circle flat. Next, you're going to grab your second piece of 36-inch wire and put it behind the first loop and over the flat portion of your wire. So you can kind of see how I did it. Then you shove your Allen key in and flatten out the end of your last piece of wire against the inside of the coil and wrap your wire over the end piece, kind of like our very first coil. And then we continue on with our weave, going all the way around again. And once we make it all the way back around, then we have to kind of fold in the dangly portion and then hook our wire around so it's in front of our previous loop, but goes through, same as the rest of our weaves, through the loop from one side to the other, but making sure it's in front of the end wire from when we started the loop. I know the wording is kind of weird, but you can see what I'm doing on the screen. And this portion can be fun to pull through, so you might have to grab some different pliers and make sure you can get a good grip on it. So here's the good view. You can kind of see exactly how it's done. Then we fold the end of our previous wire forward, and we continue on with our weave. One point is to make sure you get it over the end of our previous wire. We don't want that sticking out, otherwise it can catch on stuff when you're wearing the bracelet. So once we've reached the end of our coil and we've added our last 36-inch piece of wire, we're just going to cut off the end and then use our Allen key to squish it flat against the inside of the bracelet because we're not adding any more wires. Then we're going to grab our two 8-inch pieces of wire. And what these are used for is to make this kind of nice wrapping stuff around the ends of our bracelet. So what we do is we make a little hook on the end of the 8-inch wire and we put it in 2 or 3 loops up, push it through, and then pull it back in around one of the strands of our bracelet to kind of fix it in position in a specific place. So then once we've done that, we kind of try and squish it on the inside closed a little bit to keep it from falling out. And we do the same thing with the other side. So as you can see here, we're doing the same thing with the other side. This side's a little more tricky. You might not be able to squish your end closed as well, but it's not a big deal. It just, if the end falls out as you're pulling it through the draw plate, it can be a pain. If you can't really pull it through, just grab some pliers and then pull it with the pliers. That's generally helpful at any time during this bracelet making. So you squish the end closed a little bit here and then pull it through, and that should be good enough for when you pull it through the draw plate. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pull our bracelet through our draw plate, and we're going to start with 7/16. It's important to start with bigger holes. If you try and start too small right off the bat, it just won't work. And one thing that I definitely missed here is you're supposed to take the tape off the end, which you should do. Uh, when you're pulling it through, it's also important that if you can't get it through with your hands, you can take your Teflon tip pliers and grab onto the flower portion of it and pull it through. This is where I realized I didn't take the tape off. So we'll get rid of that. And in this next clip, this is why I didn't show each individual pull through of the draw plate, is because it can sometimes just let go, which will allow you to punch your camera mount. Whoops. So I'll jump right down to when it's done, and that'll be when we get down to the 3/16 stage. Once we've got our bracelet down to 3/16, we can kind of measure it out, make sure it's the right size for our wrist. And then what we're going to do now is just cut the flower off, which make sure you don't cut the 8-inch wire, but cut the rest of the flower off. And then remove all the little tabs that it leaves behind. So yeah, I got to get rid of all of those things. Once those are gone, it's time to put our jump rings and our clasp on. So this was really hard to film, so I'm just going to cut to the portion where the jump ring is in. You just put it through 2 opposing loops on your bracelet, and then you slip your clasp over the one side. And then you close your jump ring with your pliers. You just squish the ends of it closed, and they should stay closed. You kind of just squish them together. If there's a little bit of an air gap, you can squish the ring closed from the other side too. Just make sure that if you pull on the clasp, it doesn't come off the jump ring where the part is. And then we're going to make sure that our bracelet is sized properly just by attaching the clasp to the jump ring on the other side. And you kind of have to work with your hands to get it into the perfect round shape. It might be a little off at the start. So our last step is to take our 8-inch wire and we wrap it in a coil around the bottom of the jump ring and the end of the bracelet wire. And this just finishes up the ends of our bracelets nicely, and it kind of hides the crimes of having the initial loops of our bracelet be a little bit bigger than the rest. It'll cover it up nicely. You just got to make sure you keep a nice tight coil as you go around and around. And then once you get to the bottom, you can tighten it down with some pliers. And then what I ended up doing was super gluing it just to make sure it didn't come apart. But if you tighten this wire down and pull it tight, it shouldn't come apart unless it snags on something, which is why I use the super glue. Once that's all done, we can take both ends of our wire that have both been finished off and we clasp them together, and you'll see that I don't have delicate hands that can do tiny clasps very easily. And then your bracelet won't be in the exact right shape, and you just take your hands and you kind of work your way around it, curving the bracelet. It is wire, so it bends. And there we go. Our bracelet is complete. And then if you want, the super glue does leave a little bit of a film, so to make sure to use it just on the inside, but that'll keep your wires from coming apart. There's our Viking knit chain bracelet.